Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Chav Vav Seif Zayin. Says the Mechaba, Hareichitz banohar, someone who washes in a river, tzarich sheinagev gufa yofe kashe'ele min nahar. He should make sure he dries himself off before he comes out of the river. Mipnei shelo yishar hamayim olav, that the water will stay on him. V'yitaltlim arba amas b'karmelis, and then he'll be carrying the residue water that is on him into a karmelis. Because when he gets up from that washing, yesh ribu mayim al gufay, he's got a lot of water on his body. But if a guy is just walking in the street in the Rosh Hashanah and he gets caught in the rain and there's water on his head, on his clothes, there we're not worried about it. We're not worried about water that he's carrying in Rosh Hashanah wherever he's walking. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sifkot and Chofalev, Hareichitz banohar, Kalsu apoiskim, Tenagush lo lirchitz klal banohar or b'mikvah. That the minhag is not to wash at all, whether it's in a river or in a mikvah. To motzu lovely they schita seil. The concern is that he's going to come and squeeze water out from between his hair. V'oid kamatimim, and also other reasons. I'm Mogen Avram. Well, in tvila ayin lekame. Miu with tefillah we'll get to. Miu yodav raglov mutal lirchitz banohar kashmenagev kodim sheyelech arba amas. Sorry, kashmenagev kodim sheyelech. So he's allowed to wash his hands and feet in a river kashmenagev, so long as he dries them before he goes arba amas.
Why doesn't Shulchan Orach bring down schita? It's a deraisa.
It's a gezerah of shema yischit. Yeah, it's not.
Why doesn't the Shulchan?
Why doesn't he say it first? Don't know.
It's not like it's like a major thing.
What's the question?
Yeah, but the truth is there are many reasons. This is one of them. Yeah, we'll come to it more in a minute with schita. Okay, kashaila. So when he gets up, he should try and make sure he knocks off the water before he leaves the river. Tekav kashaila samach lenar, and it's very close to the river. Samach lenar yenagev nafshe. He should sort of dry himself off. Not walk at all with all the water that's on him, because we're worried he might be carrying the excess water on Shabbos. And maybe he'll walk arba amas with all of this water on him. So he should just try and sort of dry himself off before moving. The clothes that he took off before he went into the river, make sure you keep them very close to the river, and at least the towel with which he dries himself, that he shouldn't go too far to the towel or to his clothes, because otherwise we're worried that he'll carry the water till he gets there. And so too in the river itself, when he's in a deep place and half of his body is out of the water, he's got to be careful also not to walk arba amas when his half sort of emerged from the river. Because the river itself is a karmelis, because he's carrying the water 4 amas in a karmelis. When he goes into the river and the river is low and it's sort of the water it's quite samach l'karka, he should be careful not to go from the river bank more than 4 amas, because you're going to have that problem on the way back. He's going to be carrying arba amas, the water arba amas. Just before we carry on, if you look at footnote 20, just on the above. So he says, So he said we're talking about taking a bath in the river or the mikvah. That's what Mishnah Berurah is talking about. But what about an actual bath? That actually getting in a bath on Shabbos is more strict. Even if it's cold water. That there are those the Rishonim who ask getting into washing yourself in a proper bath, and taking a cold shower, to take a cold shower on Shabbos is also mutar rak lirchetz panav yad ragav. All you can do, says the Chazon Ish, is wash your hands, feet, and face. Even on a very hot day, even in your own home, where there's no concern that you might carry the water, still taking a cold shower is not allowed. There are other concerns, like we said, of schita and other things. The concern of schita applies whenever you're going to take a shower, even whether it's in a nahar or even it's at home. He also asks taking a shower. However, he says, really, strictly speaking, taking a shower is not covered by the gezerah of not taking or not bathing in a river. The difference, of course, is when you go to bathe in a river, you're going into the water, which is similar to the bath, right? And then when it comes to a shower, it's the other way around. The water is going on you. If the concern was only schita, they wouldn't ask taking a showering. Even though, says Ramosha, that lechatchila it's not a good idea to take a shower on Shabbos. However, and the minhag is, of course, that we don't do that on Shabbos. In a situation where a person is very distressed, he's allowed to take a cold shower. If I'm not mistaken, the Shmir Shabbos says the same thing, that in a very hot place, you want to take a cold. Yeah, so says according to the Chazon Ish and the others, they are Minchas Yitzchak, they are, and even though they're in Bnei Brak and it can be very hot, but Ramosha famously says that having a cold shower b'mokum tsar, if you're very distressed, it's boiling hot and you need to cool down, then it would be okay. You've got to just be careful with the schita. How we'll be careful with the schita, we're going to come to in a minute. Because there are several reasons. There is carrying the water, and those sort of things, and therefore it says Ramosha, that's only a problem. That's the gzeir of going into a nahar or going into a body of water. But when the body of water is coming onto you, it's not caught by the same thing. However, the minhag is not to do it. But the minhag is not to do it. But still, b'makom tsar, it would be allowed. So that's useful. I know local rabbanim who were paskin that for. There was a certain person I can think of who just couldn't take the heat, and he said if you're very batar, you can have to have a cold shower. Be careful of schita. But the minhag is definitely not to. Okay, let's finish off. Chaf gimel lo hikpidu. So this is going. What's this going on? Aval. Yeah, but you get caught in a rainstorm, then we're not worried about this. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Chof Gimel, because the water that gets on you is relatively, it's not the same as a proper bath or shower. And it's unlikely you're going to have so much water on you that it's going to be a shail of hoitzah. Chazal won't go easy. They didn't include the person who gets caught in a rainstorm. It's not really the normal way of carrying, and therefore Chazal won't go there. V'ayim behagra, or the pirish hatoisus mashma, ta'afilu riba hamayim nivla belbusha. Even if he's got a lot of water which have been sort of soaked his clothes, gam kein mutalelech bohen v'ayim betaz hatam, and see the reason for the in the taz. So if you look at 24, he says sham bier shekiven she'ef shleiman mikach. At the end of the day, you can't really help it. Well, you're just walking on Shabbos and you get caught in a storm. So what do you want him to do? Shar ha'adam ha'ilech b'rishus rabim. And suddenly you got caught in a rainstorm. Chazal only asked when he went in, to get to wash in a river. That's when Chazal made the gezerah. But if he gets caught in a storm, it wasn't his fault. Even to go for, you got to go to shul, or you want to go to the shalom zach or whatever, even though it's raining, that's still allowed. Chazal don't do measures by half. They don't say that if it's heavy rain and this and that. So we're not worried about it. You can keep walking, or you can even go out if it's raining. Okay, ches. Adam mutar litbal mitzumasa b'Shabbos. A person is allowed to go to the mikvah on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Adam Rotzolema. Afagav the kli osela hatbila v'letar mitumas v'Shabbos. Even though a kli, you can't be tovel a kli that you just bought, and you want to be tovel it, you can't do that on Shabbos, because it's as if you fixed it. Till now I can't use this kli, and now I can. Adam shani, a person is different, because it just gives the appearance, not that he's fixing himself, he was Tomei, now he's Tahar, but rather he's just, maybe he's just cooling off. Even if it's the winter and it's cold, the gamamayim sruchim and the water may be dirty, she'ein derech lichotz bohem, and you're not going to sort of wash in them. A guy comes back, filthy from a journey, and he wants to sort of clean himself. He could still do that even though the water is not so clean. And therefore, even though he could have toveled before Shabbos, nevertheless, he's allowed, a human being is allowed to be toveled on Shabbos. And the minhag is that women who are not, they don't tovel shalei b'zmanon, unless, if it's not the zman of Mikvah, of Leil Tvila, then they should avoid tefillah unnecessarily. Because apoiskim di yofa nagu, that's a correct thing. Mishum tekim de soif aminig bizmanenu lesa b'Shabbos lichot kol haguf. Since the minhag is to not wash your whole body, afilu b'tzayin, and even with cold water, v'chanal imkein nikar shehu mishum tefillah or mechzi k'masakin, and therefore it looks like they're doing it k'masakin. Because achrein de mikol makom nir de mutar litbal l'kiryei, that if a person is a balkari, he's had some form of a mission, there he is mutter to go to the mikvah. Yeah, and therefore that there was in days of old Tfilas Ezra that if a person is a balkari, that he should be misakin himself. That in the olden days he wasn't allowed to learn Torah unless he went to the mikvah. But nowadays that has gone, and therefore there's less tikkun, and in a way that gives you the permission to go to the mikvah. Because if you were not allowed to learn, then it's a proper tikkun. But since there's that has been bottled, and therefore there's no real problem to learn Torah and to daven when a person is a balkari. So therefore, going to the mikveh is not being misaken anything, and therefore it's okay. And therefore it's allowed. A person is makel and wants to go to the mikveh, he's allowed to B'nitzvah b'Shabbos, if he became Tomei on Shabbos, v'yontav gufa, nire b'vadai de'ein lahachmir, and if he wants to go to the mikveh, he can, v'chein nispashet haminik lahatir, ach yizoy moed shelo yovel de schita du isugamor. So, because he should just be careful if he wants to go. So the minhag is, and that is indeed the minhag, and therefore Shabbos morning you could see a mikveh quite busy. People, that seems to be the minhag. Now there's a very interesting footnote. Take a look at 25. Look at the second paragraph. He says ulemaisa. Yeah, he says this. The Mishnah Berurah says nispashet haminig lahatir, that we do go to the mikvah on Shabbos. So he says in 25 in the second paragraph, ulemaisa be'ilin tefillah b'Shabbos hevi b'tshuvas hanhogas. That's Rav Moshe Sternbuch of the Sefer Midas. Edus ne'emono shekeinoag haChovetz Chaim litbol b'Shabbos. That the Chovetz Chaim himself would be tovel on Shabbos. V'chein heir hagon. I think that's Rav Bengis. Shehagon Rav Chaim v'Volozhin nohag litbol b'Shabbos. Even Rav Chaim v'Volozhin, there would be tovel on Shabbos. V'haisif Hagon Rav Elyashiv. Shehoil v'tfilas Ezra nitzruch ha'moed lifnei ha'tfilah. Since tfilas Ezra is a choshev thing before tfilah, roy litbol b'Shabbos im nitzvah b'Shabbos. It's roy to go to the mikvah on Shabbos if he became Tomei on Shabbos. V'chein kos b'shad shuv v'shevet ha'levi. V'chein nohag the stipler Hagon Rav Chaim Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky. Ochein. Now this is fascinating. The das ha'chaznish. Ein little tfilas Ezra b'Shabbos. The Chaznish said not. K'mavur b'maiserav b'shem hagra, because the Chaznish, because he felt that we should be machmir like the Gon, that the Gon says that you shouldn't be tovel on Shabbos. So mikol makom. Nevertheless, listen to this lovely anecdote. Muva b'orchos Rabbeinu sheheid Hagon Reb Chaim Kanievsky shehu v'aviv zatzal, that the Reb Chaim Kanievsky together with his father the stipler Tovlu b'Shabbos b'mikvah b'beis HaChazon Ish. Do you remember the Chazon Ish had a mikvah in his house? They recently discovered it. So the stipler, the Chaim Kanievsky, was made that he went with his father to be tovel in the mikveh in the house of the Chazon Ish. V'lo mocha bohem, and the Chazon Ish didn't protest. V'chein agu kreivu talmidim shetovlu b'mikvah shebebeisei, and other relatives and talmidim also did the same. V'lo mocha bohem. And when they asked him, "Ha'imuta, is it allowed to go to the mikveh on Shabbos?" He just said the Gan said it's osa. But he didn't protest against those who were tovel. So a very interesting anecdote. Okay, let's just do Tess. Says the Mechaba, Mutza lirchetz panav yod v'raglov b'dvarim she'en masirim se'em u'ravim im dvarim ha'mashirim mavad shelo yeh ha'reiv midov ha'meshia. So this gets to your point you asked about schita. So the Mechaba says you're allowed to wash your face, your hands, and your feet b'dvarim she'en masirim se'em, with things which are not going to remove hair, even though you're mixing it with other things with dvarim hamashim that could remove hair. So long as you're using something which is not more likely than not to remove hair. So says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Chofhei, Lirchetz Panav Yad Raglov. Hainu, Afilu Yesh Lo Zakan. Even if you got a beard, Vuadin Se'er Reish, and certainly your hair, Actually Yischetem Achritzosa. Just be careful not to do schita after you've washed. Now look at 27. Interesting footnote. Midvar of Elu she'osa lischetes hasaoris. You see from here that you shouldn't sort of do schita on your hair. Diik hagonum shlem zaman Orach. Shelei osru elu lischet. Avol lagas bohem, to touch your hair on Shabbos. Mechashash sheme yischet leosru. That we don't asa. V'sheina dinam linizeh mibeget she'shera b'mayim she'kosav armo le'el she'osa latat l'shem yischetuhu. So previously we said that if a towel or some material becomes wet, becomes saturated with water, there's an issa even to touch it, to move it. It becomes also because it's inevitable you're going to squeeze the hair. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman that if you washed your face and your beard or your hair of your head is wet, there's no problem to touch it. That's okay. But the problem is just to do schita too much. Now that's not. Or the Indian niguv b'sahasaras magevet, with regard to drying your hair with a towel, so kosav haben ishchai shelo yenagvim b'keach. Just don't dry them too forcibly. Ela benachas laat laat. Do it gently. Ad sheyivlu hamayim b'magevet. So you sort of you what? No. So you sort of dab with the towel. You dab your hair and your thing, and therefore that would not be a problem. Yeah. Okay. Let's. And he brings others as well who says the same thing. Let's just finish off Mishnah Berurah. Bidvarim chavov. Mishnah Berurah Sivkot and chavov. So bidvarim she'en mashirim se'el. So rotzaloma she'enam vaday mishirim. You can't dry yourself with something which is like a very rough towel or something like that, which is certainly going to be to pull out hair. And even if you sometimes you look at the towel and maybe there's a hair on it, you're not really intending to do that. So long as the Mechaber concluded, so long as it's not, for the majority, is not going to pull out. Because if it's very likely, then it's psik reisha. For osmishum geizes, so the bottom line is this: it says in the Mechaber, you're allowed to wash your face and if it splashes on your hair and your beard, no problem. But just when you dry it, just dab it with the towel rather than do it too vigorously, because of the concern of maybe you pull out your hair. So just to summarize what we said, that a person when he goes to a river or whatever and he wants to wash his feet or something like that, or bathe, he should be careful not to carry the water daladamas in a karmelis or from Rosh Rabim. And then we said, muta litbol b'tumas for Shabbos. The person is allowed to go to the mikvah on Shabbos. And we said even nowadays, because the gezerah was against, you can't be tovel kli because that's nirka masakin. Mashenkein, a person himself, but there's no concern. Even nowadays, in the olden days, you couldn't daven and learn without going to the mikvah. Therefore, there was a problem of nirka masakin. But nowadays, that's not an absolute bar, and therefore there's no nirka masakin. And therefore, the minhag is, as the Mishnah Berurah says, nispashet haminig lahatir, to go to the mikvah on Shabbos. However, the Gan in Ma'aser Rav says not. The Chazon Ish was machmir like that, but he did not protest even in his own house and his own brother-in-law, a nephew, and other Talmidim would go to the mikveh in the Chazon Ish's house, and he didn't protest against them, and that seems to be the minhag. And regarding washing your face and hands, that's allowed on Shabbos, but just be careful with schita, not to to dry yourself too vigorously. And regarding a cold shower on Shabbos, again, the minhag is definitely not to. However, even though there are others who are more machmir, Moshe did say that if a person is betzar, then to take a cold shower, there's no problems of bishul or anything like that, would be allowed. But again, be careful with schita and things like that. Okay.